welcome to the Cheer Up Podcast. I am your host, Kara R. Hunt, and with me is the beautiful, sweet, and full of grace and mercy, Cheri Swalwell. How are you today, Cheri?
I I am good, but wow, you give me way too much credit. Ask my kids and they'll tell you differently.
Well, do they count? Do our children count? Do our immediate family count? I don't know. Truly, they do tend to bring out a side of us that, 98% of the time isn't there. It's like, so I don't know. I'm wondering if we should count family when it comes to grace and mercy. That's me looking for an excuse. Like, God, do we have to?
It's so funny. As they get older, I said it's so funny because as they get older and older and older, they really truly become our friends instead of just our kids. And so I love that we can be honest with them. And it's a perfect segue into the topic that we're talking about today, because I think with family, you either step on eggshells and push things under the rug, or you take offense super easily and, people don't talk. And we've always wanted to do things very differently in our family. We want to be able to talk about conflicts. And I know you're the same way, Kara, but to be able to talk about conflicts and to be able to resolve them when they're still little inconveniences, instead of letting them wait until they grow into full-blown, World War 10, 12, 15. So when I say don't ask my kids, it's kind of in a joking way, but it's also because our families see our best and our worst. And
yes, that's what I meant. Yes.
Yeah. And I just always want to make sure that they know how much I love them and how important and valuable they are in our family, while at the same time being honest if we have a conflict. I don't want to push things under the rug so that we aren't being honest with each other. But honest doesn't have to be mean. Honest can be nice to get to that resolution, as long as both parties are willing to work it out. From beginning to end.
And that's why I think we need to start with our kids when they're young. Talking about boundaries when they're young, because then it's easier for them to understand as they get older. What's acceptable and what's not. But for those of you who are just now joining us, welcome to Cheer Nation. If this is your first time listening, welcome, and we say thank you. And for all of our returning listeners, thank you once again for tuning in. Oh my goodness, I have had coffee this morning, but I don't think my tongue knows that. But
that's how it was yesterday. I could not speak for the life of me.
So it is like, but if you're returning listeners, thank you so much. And for all of our listeners today, please don't forget to subscribe, download, like. It just really helps us with the algorithm to reach more and more people. And speaking of people, I just like to give a shout out to just some new listeners that have popped up. I'm not sure if this is a country or a state, but it's Gangseo Busan, Busan. We also have Jonesboro, Arkansas. We have the province of Rizal. We have Pretoria. We have Dallas, Texas, Kansas City, Missouri, because there's two Kansas Cities. We have North Carolina. Charlotte is in the house. We have Inglewood, California. Welcome, Inglewood. We have Detroit. We have Manila in the Philippines. We have Springfield, Massachusetts, because there's Springfields, I think, in every state. So Conley, Georgia, Flagstaff, Atlanta, Connecticut, Manchester, Connecticut, Los Angeles. You're new to us, I believe, so thank you so much for tuning in with us today. There's also Nova Scotia, Australia, Indianapolis, Virginia, Glendale, Arizona, Johannesburg. We just want to all say thank you. Nepal, South Korea, Oh, my goodness. Thank you so much for all of our listeners in those places and more that continue to tune in or are new and tuning in. And we just want to say hello, hi, welcome to Cheri Nation, and thank you for tuning in to the podcast. And you have no idea how much Cheri and I appreciate it. And for those who are just tuning in, we recently, for the past couple of weeks, have been talking about boundaries. And we've talked about, we've used, while we were talking about boundaries, you use some of the characters in the Bible as examples of what happens when we have good boundaries, in between boundaries, and no boundaries. otherwise known as bad boundaries or boundaries that don't exist. So if you want to go back and just check out some of those, we'll talk about more of those in a minute, but just let you know that if you're just really enjoying this boundary series, we've been getting really great feedback on it. So just go back and listen to some of the others, as well. So, oh my goodness, Cheri, the past couple of weeks, you and I have talked about Samson, and about his lack of boundaries, Joseph and his very good, strong boundaries that he had with Potiphar's wife. We've talked about Rebecca, her brother Laman, and how their lack of boundaries and manipulation and deception just went on for another generation or two. With Isaac, Jacob, Leah, and Rachel, we've also talked about David and Jonathan, how he was able to work that fine line between his dad and his brother of his soul, David, King David. And we also talked about Eli's sons and David's sons, and what happens when you have like no boundaries when it comes to your children. And then we also have talked about, is it Nabal, Cheri? Nabal and Abigail.
Yep.
Yes. Nabal and and what happens when you just have someone foolish in your life and you have to step in and take the reins temporarily to avoid disaster. Cheri, just as we wrap up this boundary series, what are your first thoughts that come to Samson and the boundaries there? What stood out to you the most?
Well, actually, can I start with a different one? Because as you were talking, this came to my mind. So I was thinking about David, and I was thinking about, or King David, I should say, and then Eli also, the prophet. And I think it's really, really important for us to remember. So King David obviously had he was anointed as king, and he had a very, very important job. So it was like ruling a kingdom, and he was only the second king ever for the Israelites. So that was a huge weight on his shoulders. But God, I don't think, calls us to an anointing and a job like that of importance, but then expects us to neglect the biggest job we have, the only job that we ourselves can do, and that is being a parent and being a good parent. So yes, his wives needed to step up and do their part. And I say wives because he had multiple, but they had sons. And I'm sure that his DNA had warrior qualities in them. So he was raising warrior quality sons. Those are strong personalities. Now, Abigail, she proved that she had a strong personality, but we don't really know much about his other wives. Bathsheba, she gave in to him because she had to. It was that or die. So she had a personality. So I guess what I'm getting at is I think it's so important, or the thing that God kind of reminded me as you were giving us this wonderful summary that you did, is that we cannot neglect our homes and the first job that we have, the first blessing that God has given us, which is our family, in order to fulfill the callings that he has put in our lives. If God gave us the ability to have such a huge calling outside of our home, then he most definitely gave us the tools and the strategies we need to be the father, mother, inside the home before we step outside of the home. And the same goes for Eli. We don't hear anything about Eli's wife. Maybe she was dead. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know how any of that works, but he obviously was married at some point because he had 2 sons. So he needed to, like, at that point, they were old enough. They were not only his children, but they were under his leadership as their vocation. So they needed to listen to him double. They needed to listen to him as their father, and they needed to listen to them as their boss. And he failed on both accounts for them. And as a result, they all lost their.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that was all I was going to say, is that they lost their lives.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I interrupted your thought right there. because, and because I'm like, oh, yeah, it is. Because as you were talking, I got to thinking about right now, today, in current times. Okay, so, well, let me backtrack just a tiny little bit. With Eli, as you just mentioned, his lack of boundaries with his sons ended up with his demise and his son's demise, right? Because he had such a high calling on his life. And it wasn't like he did not know, right? We're only responsible for what we know. It's not like he did not know what his sons were doing, and they were doing horrendous things in God's eyes. He knew, and he did nothing about it. That's the difference, and in David's case, and with some of his kids, he knew too. So Eli knew what they were doing. The people complained to him and said, "Hey, your sons are doing this, and this," and he would like yell at them or something or whatever. But he had no consequences. He actually should have removed them from that position ASAP. Because like you said, we're not talking about children here. They were adults, and they were doing horrific things there in the temple and to the people of the temple and the people who came to make their sacrifices to God. And again, if you want to know more about that, just look up go through our podcast thing and just scroll it, and you'll see the ones about Eli and David. They're in the same podcast episode, but bringing it to current times, because Eli paid for his son's mistakes as well. And it grieved him before he even, even he had to pay for it. And it just grieved him. His sons did. They brought him a lot of grief. And then when he heard of their death, he was so grieved, right? And it brings me to current times like now. Like, there is a major city in our state that in the downtown area has been having major issues with people being harassed, assaulted, and just really, really bothered and annoyed when they go down there for like sporting events, festivals, carnivals, and everything else. Because at nighttime, especially during the weekends, like Friday through Sunday, there's a bunch of young people down there just causing chaos and everything else. And so finally, law enforcement is like, hey, if you're under this age and you're still out after 10 p.m. on these nights, then not only are you going to go to jail because we now putting in place a curfew, but your parents they can be locked up or hit with a hefty fine, because there's no way that you should be out this late and you causing this type of damage. And they've done that, and they put that into effect. And I've heard it's not just in that area, that cities across the country have had to start doing this for various reasons. So when you think about parents having to pay for the decisions of their kids, that goes all the way back to the Bible sometimes. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's a correlation there. Now, here, it's not that these kids offended. Well, yeah, in a way, they are offending God. Now, whether they're the current ones, whether they know God or not, then, that's a completely different story. But now you have law enforcement saying, hey, if your child is 15 and he's out here doing stuff at midnight and harming people or harassing them and threatening them, and this is not your first time knowing, and you know about it and you're not doing anything about it, then you're going to be held accountable in one way or the other. And what is that, Cheri? Boundaries.
Absolutely.
That is law enforcement establishing boundaries. What is curfew? Just a modern day word for a boundary. That's basically what it is.
What's so sad, Kara, is that the parents nowadays are taking the examples of David, King David, and Prophet Eli. They're not parenting their children. They're not taking care of the very first blessing, the very first calling, the very first, I don't know what other word I want, that God has established. He established a family. He blessed us with a family. Therefore, it is our responsibility to take care of our family. And so now we have teachers who have to be parents. Now we have cops who have to be parents. Now we have law enforcement that has to be parents.
Oh, absolutely. And it's like, and they're also saying this isn't the first or second time this particular child or minor has been locked up, and you guys have been notified, and you aren't doing anything about it. So now you're going to have to do something about it, right?
Right.
They're just, and everything. Now, do all parents know what their kids are doing at midnight? No, because kids lie. Okay?
Right. And
kids lie. Teenagers lie. How many times, years ago, did someone tell their mom, oh, I'm going over so-and-so's house, when I was actually at another girlfriend's house, and we were doing all sorts of crazy stuff that my mom didn't know about, right? But what we weren't doing was not criminal. What we were doing was not criminal, right? We were just out having fun, with people, and probably in some places my mom probably would have been like, what the blazes are you doing there? And everything else. But we were just out having fun. It'd be like midnight or 1 o'clock in the morning. Thankfully, nothing, horrible happened to us during those times. But it's not like I could tell my mom, oh, we're going to go here. She'd probably be like, what? Why? Okay. So do teenagers lie to their parents? Yes. They could say, oh, Mom, I'm just going over Bobby's house, right? And then you're downtown somewhere and you're creating havoc. Okay. But the thing is, here's the difference. When you are made aware that your child has been arrested, that they have been trespassed, that they have committed a crime, which law enforcement will do. They will let you know, right? Because if they're minor, you have to know.
Right.
Right? So if they're minor, you have to know. And everything. Once you are made aware, what do you do about it? Are you like Eli and you just yell at them and you be like, stop that, quit doing this. The people are complaining. They keep coming to me talking about how bad you're doing, all this horrible stuff you're doing, and then leave it at that? Or do you implement consequences?
Well, and I want to throw something out there, Kara. It sounds like, from the way that you said it, and this is the way it is in the Bible, Eli got mad at them for the inconvenience to him. He wasn't sitting down and saying, I'm concerned about your heart. I'm concerned about your this. I'm concerned about that. It sounds like it, and just like David too. David couldn't be bothered when Tamar was raped. I'm a girl. I am a female. If my dad dismissed something that tragic in my life, wow. And I realized that the culture in the Middle East, and I realized the culture back then is very different from the culture now, but women have feelings. It doesn't matter where you live, women have feelings. Women, that hurts. If you bleed, it hurts. It hurts. So I can't
absolutely.
I can't imagine having that type of and that was so blatant. My dad knew that I got raped, and
by my brother.
Yeah, by my brother, and he did nothing. My brother had to defend me. Like, wow.
Yeah, her other brother. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Her other brother had to defend her because the one brother had taken advantage of her. And of course, now back then in the Middle East, sons were looked upon with just a little bit more care, I think, because they got to take over the kingdom. Something happens to me, right? Right. I'm thinking like King David, right? That one of them has to take over the kingdom, right? And and everything else. But that still, it's like, why didn't he do anything? Did he, why did her other brother have to take matters into his own hands for his sister's dignity, right? And sometimes we have to look at that as parents. And like you say, the first time they come home and you're like, they were taken in by law enforcement or whatever the case may be, and you're like, okay, let's talk about why this happened. And it depends on the offense, right?
Mm-hmm.
Depends on the consequences, right? But let's just say they were just picked up for being past curfew, right? You're 15 and the curfew's at 10, and they picked you up at 1 a.m., right?
Right.
We're going to have a talk. You need to have a talk with your teen and ask them why they were, when they knew of the curfew, and why they decided to disobey it, and why they lied to you.
Right.
That they were with someone else.
Because you care about them and their character, not because you're embarrassed going to look bad at the water cooler tomorrow.
Oh, absolutely, right? Yeah. Because you care and you're concerned and you're just like, hey, what is going on? What were you doing? Do you know how many ways this could have went really, really, really bad, right? And let's talk about the people you're hanging with that's encouraging you to do this. If you stop it when it's small, if you put those boundaries in and say, hey, okay, listen, this time they only gave you a citation or whatever. Next time they're not going to be so lenient, but let there not be a next time. Okay? Because if you're ever picked up, I'm not going to pick you. I'm not going to come down and get you. We will never pay bail. You're going to have to pay the consequences there, and you're going to have to pay the consequences here. And you have to be firm about that, because that one little, they just got picked up and cited, if it's not corrected and you don't put firm consequences in place, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And it's no longer just a citation. It's armed robbery.
Mm-hmm.
It's assault. It's all these, other things. So we have to be involved in our kids' lives. Can we always control them and where they are? No, because parents work for a living, right? And we're assuming when we drop our kids off at school that they stay at school. We all know that sometimes they don't. Okay, we've been to school, right? Most of us, and we all know that you may drop them off at school and you're thinking they're going to class, and they go somewhere else. Okay, so it's when you find out, when the school teacher, the principal calls or the counselor calls, and they say, "Hey, so and so is absent today," that you're immediately on it.
Mm-hmm.
And if that means dropping off work, and you're like, "I am so sorry, I have to leave. I need to find my child." And we need to have a heart-to-heart. Now, my definition of a heart-to-heart would be different than someone else's, Like, what do you mean you weren't at school? I dropped you off there. I trusted that you were there. And how many other times has this happened, right? So, but again, you started early, then it becomes a obstacle for them doing it further on down the line. And again, we talked about all of that with Eli and David, but I just wanted to draw that line to how it still impacts us today. And how, as parents, we really have to be careful where our children are, what they're doing, and while they're still under our care. Now, if they're out of your home, and everything else, obviously that's a much more difficult situation to be aware of, what they're doing and, things like that. But when they are under our care, or they're doing something wrong, or something like that. So you need to correct it, like right then and there. Like I even remember moms, like, when kids would be at the playground or something, and I remember just like in this one situation, it wasn't at the playground though, but it was a sister and brother. They were outside playing. They couldn't have, maybe the boy was about 7, the girl was about 5, a little bit. And I remember the little girl made her brother mad. It was over some toy, I believe. And I remember the brother, like, he must have hit the little girl, his little sister, right? And I don't mean like a punch. You know how siblings are, right? Yeah. And I remember the mom came out, and she was on it right away. She was like, "What did you just do? Did you just hit your sister? You are never to hit." And she wasn't like yelling and screaming. She was like, "You are never to hit your sister. That is not what you do. You're supposed to protect her, and different things like that." And just, I can't remember the exact words that she used, but it was, it was like along those lines. And I'm like, that's the way you handle it. You stop it immediately. And you're like, hey, what are you doing? Why did you hit your sister? Oh, well, she took my toy. Or I wanted to ride the bicycle and then she wanted to ride it. Okay, well, then you guys talk it out. You are never to hit her. Okay? And you are never to hit him. And this is why. Okay? And you are your sister's protector. You're older than her. You're her big brother. You're not supposed to be harming her. Like, it's supposed to be the opposite. You protect her from harm. Having conversations like that when they're little, right? So when they get, and it doesn't have to be brother, sister. It could be sister, sister, brother, brother. Right? And everything else where you just have those conversations like, this is your sister. There's nothing in this world that's ever going to change her from being your sister. You're the bigger sister, you're the younger sister. You guys are going to be in each other's life forever. You are connected by a bond that no one can ever alter. Why are you hitting each other? Why are you doing this? You're going to have disagreements, but let's talk them through, right? It starts when they're little. It starts when they're little.
How to talk it through, which is exactly what that lady was doing. Because if you can't just expect a child or even some adults to know what to do, to know how to handle it.
Oh, absolutely. And kids are kids. It's all about them, right? It's all about them. In their world, it's all about them. And of course, if you have a sibling who's trying to take something you want to play with, they're going to argue. They're going to fight, right? And everything else. And honestly, and I'm not sure, but I'm thinking if it would have been brother to brother and they got into a wrestling match, there probably would have been less talking and just breaking it up, right? Because boys tend to be rumble and tumble, and everything else. And so, and that depends on your own parenting style. But girls, they tend to break up immediately. Boys, they're just like, oh, they work it out.
Well, it's fascinating. Like I love watching little kids, but we, my one son and I serve in the infant room in our church, and we're a small town church, and so there are a lot of cousins. In fact, pretty much the majority of the kids that we watch are all cousins with each other, and it's so much fun to watch them because they do the same thing. They get into little scuffles. They'll steal toys away from each other. And I'm like, hey, you don't want to do that. I'm like, can you get to play with it for a little bit and then just tell, so-and-so, we'll say Johnny, tell Johnny that you're almost done. And when you're done, it'll be his turn. Johnny, my turn. You soon. I mean, it's like so cute to watch them because not only are they getting it from their parents, but we're just reinforcing what the parents are already doing. And so it goes a lot quicker because they're used to it, and plus they know the kids. So it's just really, really fascinating to watch that it doesn't have to be some long drawn out thing, but if it's consistent, you get the results so much quicker. And these cousins are super close with each other. Like they have a tight bond, which I absolutely love watching.
And it's so important, and it's so cute when they're kids because they tend to be a little bit much quicker forgiving than when it's teenagers, right?
Yes.
Because teenagers will storm off, and the girls will, but by then you're dealing with hormones. If you do it when you're younger, you're not dealing with hormones. Okay,
right? And they're quicker to come back because they remember the good.
Yeah, because they remember the good. Now, as they become teenagers, of course, it's going to be a little bit more difficult, right? We all know that it's going to be a little bit more difficult because the feelings cut deeper. You got emotions involved. You got self-esteem, self-worth, and all these other things involved. So that involves a different tactic, right? But still, the boundaries have to be there. The boundaries have to be there. And in no case and in no scenario should a teenage boy be hitting his teenage sister.
No.
Right?
No.
Yeah,
and
that's okay.
Hitting the teenage boy. I cannot stand it.
Oh, yes, you're right. Right. Yes.
I cannot stand it when parents are, you can't hit her, but she can hit you. It goes both ways. She can't hit you. You can't hit her.
Absolutely, because it goes absolutely 1,000% both ways. You're not supposed to be hitting each other, period. And everything else. And so it's just as we become parents, we don't even realize that we're putting boundaries in place every single day. Every single day. We have to do it with our kids for their safety, for their education, for their academic, for their care, and in some cases because of law enforcement and, and everything else. So we have to put those in place every day, right? We have to have boundaries, and they naturally come in the households. In some cases, there are those boundaries. Mm-hmm.
And we need to be aware of the fact that our kids are watching us, especially as they get older and older. And with more and more people working from home, our kids are picking up whether or not we have boundaries with our boss, whether or not we have boundaries with our coworkers, whether or not we have boundaries with whoever. In fact, I'll give this scenario. So I used to do daycare, and I used to watch this boy from our church. And so we were friends. His mom, I only watched him once a week, and his mom would come over, and I would have tea made, and I would have cookies, and we would sit and we would catch up and talk about our day. Well, the dad was the one that dropped him off. And my kids made the comment innocently, but they're like, oh, you stand and talk to so-and-so all the time. And I said, well, hold up here. I said, there's a big difference. I invite his mom in, and we sit for like an hour and a half. His dad and I stand outside, and we talk for maybe 15 minutes. Big difference. Mm-hmm. My kids saw the boundaries. I mean, we were friends with both of them, but my husband was at work. His wife was at work. We were very, very careful to make sure that there was no come sit down, have a cup of coffee. No, it was, we stood outside. We laughed and joked about whatever happened at church that week, and that was it. So our kids are watching. That was my whole point of that story, is our kids are watching. They see whether or how we react, how we treat our spouses. They see how we treat other opposite sex friends. They see how we, like we were kidding also the other day. Well, not really kidding. I was talking to a friend, and she was telling me that a friend of hers husband died suddenly a couple weeks ago. And his wife did not know the passcode to his phone. And it ended up becoming a really horrible, horrible thing, because I guess he had and this shows you how horrible I am with technology, but I guess he had like the fingerprint on it. But he also had the numbers, but she didn't know the numbers. And she had asked him just a couple months before that. So that was probably a God thing that she had asked him, but he wouldn't give it to her. He like jokingly wouldn't give it to her. So now she had to like petition the court to get access to her husband's phone that had the access to their bank accounts and this, that, and the other. And the long story of it is he was like, no, you aren't getting this. And in our house, we're very open. And so I made the comment the other day. I said, hey, do you know the passcode to my phone? Because normally I don't passcode it, but the latest update made me passcode it, so I just haven't taken it off. So I'm like, do you know the passcode to my phone? Because if I die, and so my kid was quick to say, we don't speak death in the family. I said, wait a minute. I'm not speaking death over myself. Honest. I said, there's a point to my question. Mm-hmm. I said, but do you know the passcode? Because if something were to unexpectedly happen to me, I don't want you locked out of my phone. But like my husband knows he can have, in fact, it's funny. The other day, he took my phone because he was listening to a webinar on his phone and he wanted to get on Amazon. So he just grabbed my phone and did what he wanted to. We have no secrets in that regard. So our kids are all of that was to say our kids are watching. Our kids are watching how we have boundaries with them, how we have boundaries with other people.
Oh, 1,000%. And just FYI, if you're a spouse and your spouse refuses to give you access information to their contacts, a discussion needs to be had. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm just going to throw that out there. But it's so funny you mentioned that situation between you and the parent of the father of one of your daycare students, because that brings us back to boundaries like with Nabal and Abigail. Right? And everything else, meaning boundaries between couples or people, and everything else. And so like in Abigail's situation, she had to step in because her husband was just being foolish. And he was about to bring King David, made King David so mad that King David was about to slaughter all the men in his household, and including Nabal. But Abigail, being a woman of God, was able to appease to David to stop that. And we talk about how we just need to recognize the fool in the situation and whether or not we need to go to them and talk about it or immediately step in. And Abigail, in Nabal's case, she was under David was on his way. Right? It wasn't like she could say, "Oh, I'll talk to my husband about it tomorrow." He was on his way, but she knew when to step in. But even in spouses and dealing with other spouses or other people, we have to be very, very careful, because then you're talking about emotional boundaries that can really, really creep in. And I don't know how many of our listeners are familiar with Lisa Whelchel, the actress. She used to play Blair on The Facts of Life, and I get her newsletters. She's on Substack, and so I get her newsletters. And I was just reading this morning how she was talking about, because she also, as an adult, went on the TV show Survivor, and many years ago. And she was talking about how her going onto Survivor was on the heels of her getting a divorce after 23 years in her marriage. Oh. So she was still kind of emotionally raw. But she was saying she noticed that while she was on Survivor, the TV show Survivor, and, for those of you who aren't familiar, they're just like on a separate island, right? And you have to survive to the end, and everything else without people voting you out, your castmates voting you out. But she was saying because she was so emotionally vulnerable, there was a particular cast member on this particular season that she had a emotional connection with. And she was just saying, because she knew she was vulnerable, and she's a Christian, she was like, because she knew she was emotionally vulnerable, she saw herself could she had to put up an emotional wall there, like, I'm getting too close to this person, like on an emotional level. Right. And she was like, I am not getting ready to do that, because she knew where she was at emotionally. Right. And she's like, I'm going to put up this boundary. She was like, because I am in such a position that I will end up saying things and doing things and stuff that I don't want to do, and everything else. But I know I'm emotionally vulnerable, but I just have this emotional tie to this person, and everything else. But what did she do there? She put up a boundary. It wasn't a physical boundary, because they're on an island, right? You gotta interact with each other. It was an emotional boundary. She was honest with herself, and she was saying, my emotional feelings towards this person is becoming a little bit deeper than just as a fellow castmate. Okay? I am fresh off of a divorce of 23 years for lack of intimacy. Now, these are her words, and it's public, right? Because she writes it in her Substack newsletter, right? So it's in public. And she was like, so I'm starving for intimacy, and I am just feeling way too close to her. So she put up that emotional boundary, because she knew that she was so emotional and vulnerable that it could lead to something that she did not want it to lead to. And so sometimes we have to, as Christians, be like, is this in a work environment? This was a game environment, right? Survivor is a game that plays out that plays out on TV. But how many times has that happened in a work environment? Cheri, you and I both know it happens in church environments. It happens, yes.
Well, that goes back to, we need to be, which I give kudos to her, because she was technically free and clear that she wouldn't have been sinning at all if she had chosen to go down that path. But kudos to her. I'm so proud of her. But that's where we need to be emotionally mature enough and spiritually mature enough that when we are before we get into those situations, so when we know that we're vulnerable, when we know that we're in a situation that could go south, that we need to ask the Holy Spirit, we need to invite him into that situation with us instead of hiding from him. Because if I hide from him, nobody will know. But if you invite him in, then he will help you get that victory. And I know that those words sound really trite, but it's so true. The closer that we grow to him, the more we should want him. And that goes back to that heart thing. when we sit down with our kids and talk to them about their boundaries. We're talking to our kids about their boundaries because we love them and we want the best for them. We're talking to the Holy Spirit about our boundaries because we want to represent Christ the best way we can, and we want to live our best lives. So it just all kind of ties together, in my opinion.
Oh, it absolutely does. And we have to know, married or unmarried, right? When you're becoming too emotionally attracted to someone, right? To where it's like, okay, I'm too vulnerable. I'm not in a space now where I'm going to make, what's the word I'm looking for? Clear decisions. Is that the word I'm looking for?
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, where I'm not in an emotional state where I'm going to make clear decisions right now because I'm being driven by my emotions. That is so key. That is so key in so many situations when it comes to relationships, married or unmarried. And like you said, she was in it clear. Now, it wasn't clear if this guy was married or not. I'm thinking he wasn't. I'm almost pretty sure he wasn't. But she knew herself well enough to know, like, if I let myself go down this road, I'm too emotional right now. I'm too vulnerable right now. I'm not going to make good decisions. I'm not going to make good decisions. And we need to know ourselves, right? That well to be able to say, and like you say, when it becomes really struggling with it, we reach out to the Holy Spirit and say, Holy Spirit, help me. Because if I'm not going to do well on this situation on my own. I already know. But it's about, like you said, not hiding, but confronting that vulnerable part of us that we know that could lead us down a path that is absolutely just going to bring problem after problem after problem after problem. Everyone thinks that, oh, it's not, and, and everything else and whatever, but it is. Especially as believers, it just causes one problem after another. Actually, it's for anyone. People may think that they can get away with it. Well, I don't believe in God, and I'm just going to do this anyway. Oh, if you think you're in the clear, you're not. Because stuff happens, and things like that will come back to the consequences of that, and the people who get hurt and how they react will come back on you like one way or another. And so we have to emotional boundaries is something else that we have to put in place. And then sometimes we have to do that with our family members. Just like we talked about with Rebecca from the Old Testament, her brother Laman, and Isaac and Jacob, and how that whole situation taking place. And using Jacob as an example, and how the situation played out with him and his twin brother Esau. That was a disaster. He ended up like serving 20 years for his uncle, who also manipulated and and tricked him, and everything else. Things worked out for Jacob. One, because he humbled himself before God, but also because God had made a promise to his father that through Isaac and Jacob, that these particular things were going to happen. So God is a God of his promises. If he makes a promise, he's going to keep it. Now we're at the third generation with Jacob, right? But he had made a promise to Abraham and Isaac, and God kept his promises. Jacob still had to pay the consequences of his behavior in regards to so many things. And because of the things he did in the past, and he's like, oh, I'm going to run away and things are going to be good. No, it wasn't. And it wasn't. And it ended up becoming one big problem after another that ended up following him for almost 2 decades. So we always have to remember that there are consequences to bad behavior. We think, oh, it's in a closet, no one's going to know, no one's going to find out. Somehow, some way, people always find out. And as believers, you may think it's just between you and that person, but God sees everything. God sees everything. And we have to keep that in mind as well when it comes to not just co-worker relationships, in this case, castmate relationships, but when it comes to siblings, when it comes to our parents, when they are, in this case, Jacob was doing something that his mom had told him to do, but it was wrong. It was bad, And when I was listening to the situation between Jacob when he stole his brother's blessing, it dawned on me that, it's like he lied to his father, obviously, but it sounds like he even lied on God. and everything else. And so, like, I'm like, oh, okay, dude, you were making all sorts of bad mistakes here, and everything else. And so, but those did come back. There's always consequences to bad behavior. And so when we have those people in our lives that we're like, oh my gosh, I just love them so much. I don't want to see any harm come to them. I want them to be able to thrive in their lives. But gosh, I don't want them to think that I'm punishing them. I don't want them to think that I'm mad at them. I don't want them to think that, I'm putting up these boundaries just to spite them. That's not what's going on. We're putting up those boundaries just like God put up boundaries with us. We have to put up boundaries with those we love and care about. And it's not to punish. It is to protect that relationship, to protect that friendship, to protect that marriage, to protect your own emotional and spiritual integrity. Like in the case of Lisa Welchel, just to protect yourself from future. In her case, it probably would have just been emotional and spiritual harm, right? That could have led to spiritual harm. And so it's about protecting. It's not about punishing. It's saying, hey, I have to put this line in place because I love you. I care about you. And I only want the best for you. I want you to live and enjoy your life in fulfillment. But in order for that to happen, in order for our relationship to grow, in order for our relationship to become all that it can be, in order for our friendship to become all that it can be, and so that our sisterhood or our siblinghood, because of your sister or brother, sisterhood, siblinghood, for it to flourish and be all that God has created it to be, we need to set boundaries. It just happens. It's just something we have to do. And I know a lot of people are like, yeah, but I don't want them to get mad at me. But they won't. Once you do it, and you do it in a loving way, and before it explodes and go nuclear, then it's a lot easier to deal with. And I just want to remind people that we make boundaries every day. We set boundaries every day, whether it's with, like, for instance, I'm going to use a pet as an example. When I had my beloved dog, Zeke, the boundary was he did not sleep in bed with us. Now, I know some people do not have a problem with their animals sleeping in bed with them. As a matter of fact, I think I'm in a minority in that case. I see so many people who let their dogs and stuff, sleep with them and everything else. So I know I may be in a minority, but it was like, okay, no jumping on you're not going to sleep with us, and everything else. You have your own bed. But that was a boundary. And dogs are animals. And if we can love animals enough, or like we put up fences, right, so that they don't run out and get hit by a car, because dogs love to run after vehicles. And sometimes they like to run after people and children. Sometimes there's no harm. They just being playful, but that other person doesn't know that. Right? So we have to put boundaries in place even with our pets. That's why we have leashes, right? So we make boundaries, small ones, every day of our lives. And if we can train pets who are by nature wild, then we can train our family, put boundaries together with our family members, right? With our loved ones, with our children, with the people we work with. It's just you're taking it to another level, but it's something you're already doing in your everyday life. Am I right, Cheri?
Oh, absolutely. I love how you brought in the whole animal thing, because so many people, I saw on Facebook the other day, whoever they are, they have a whole playroom for their dog, including a ball pit. The dog was having the time of his life, and I showed my husband, and I'm like, do we need to have one of these? I was kidding, but I'm like, do we need to have one of these? Because our dogs would absolutely love them too. But if we can, people love their animals as much as humans, and some people don't have kids, so they are their kids. If we can love, but even the ones who love their dogs that much, establish the boundaries. And it all goes back to the heart of it. You don't establish the boundary. Well, okay, so we have some boundaries in my house because I am embarrassed by the behavior of one of my dogs. Will not mention her name. But the boundary is to keep her safe. The boundary is to make her life better, to make her feel secure. not because she embarrasses me. But yes, sometimes she does embarrass me. And I am like, oh my gosh, I'm so, so sorry. This is like literally, we have a whole thing that you have to do in our house if you want to come. So only people who really, truly love us go through it, because it's ridiculous. Like, I have to put her on a leash, sit on the couch. They have to come in. She'll bark at them. She really wants to see them, but she's so, so shy and so, so timid that she's like, oh, they might hurt me. So then eventually I take her off the leash. She will go up to them. I'm like, don't worry. She's not going to touch you. She will be literally 2 inches from their face, sniffing them. I'm like, please don't touch her. Please don't acknowledge her. Please don't do anything with her.
Yeah.
And then eventually you can pet her. And it's a whole thing. Now, granted, my children's significant others that have started to come in, they are making it so she's like, oh, this is really fun. Like, people come because they love us. People come because they want to be nice to us. So it's gotten better. But yeah, like, we put the boundaries up because we love them and we want them safe. And it's a heart thing. Like that, I think when you're looking at a boundary, I think that that's the question you need to ask yourself. Holy Spirit, I need help with this area of my life. So help me put a boundary here. I'm inviting you in so that you can help me stay in check. Help me do what I want to do, but is sometimes hard to do. And then sitting down and having boundaries with those we love, or even those we don't love. We have boundaries with coworkers too. I'm not going to sit and tell a coworker, I'm having this boundary with you because I love you. No, I'm having this boundary with you because you're driving me nuts.
Yeah.
but it all goes back to our heart. Like, why are we doing it? And that, I think you just nailed it on the head so eloquently, Kara, when you described that.
Oh yeah, because with pets we have to do it all the time, and with each pet owner it's different. But I didn't like my pet jumping up on strangers, or people when they come in the front door, right? Just jumping up on them and everything else, because a lot of people don't like that, right? And so it's like, okay, you can sniff. That's if I didn't put them in a separate room, it's like you can sniff because that's just their nature, right? But no jumping up on people. Okay, don't do that, right? And everything else. And so, but it's like we do boundaries. And why do we do that? We keep them safe. We keep our guests safe, right? Because especially if they don't like that and they have on white pants or something like that. And a lot of people just don't want dog hair all over them. Right. And everything else. And they're like, oh my gosh, her dog jumped up on me and now I gotta wipe all this stuff off of me and it's gonna be so hard getting that hair off my black pants and and everything else. So we're protecting our guests and we're protecting our animal at the same time, because not everybody will be nice to them, right? And everything else. And so again, we do these boundaries because we love them. We're protecting our guests, we're protecting our dogs, and we're also teaching them discipline and boundaries of what is allowed and what's not allowed. Same thing with feeding them from the table. Our rule was do not feed the dogs from the table. Do not do that. It teaches them to beg. Right? So we're not doing that. They have a food, they have a place. If you want to give them something, take it to where they eat. Right? And that will stop them from doing that. And so, like we do boundaries every day. Even just going back to emotional boundaries, we don't go to the grocery store and someone say, hey, good morning, like the grocery clerk says, good morning, how was your day? We don't emotionally dump on them and tell them all the problems in our life for the next hour. Why don't we do that? Well, there's several reasons why we don't do that. But the main thing is a boundary. It's not the place. It's not the time. You don't know them well enough. They don't know you well enough. The other is they don't care. Right? Depending on what, there's people in line. There's other people. You don't sit there for an hour and cry about everything that's going on with you, your spouse, your kids, your friends, your church, the people you like, the people you don't like, your, life in general. You don't do that. You just don't do that. Why? Because you have an emotional boundary there, right? You just don't emotionally dumping on people you don't know that well. Well, let me put it this way. We shouldn't do that. Okay, I'm gonna leave that there. We should not do that, and everything else because there's so many things that can go wrong with that, especially if you do not know that person, right? But then there's the other boundary, Cheri, that a lot of people don't even think about. There's food.
Right.
There's food. There's our health, right? Of course, you shouldn't, smoking's bad for you. Drinking too much alcohol is bad for you. Eating too much fast food is definitely bad for you. How many of, not just saying, that that's something that you and I are saying. Science has backed all of that up, right? That a lot of that stuff is bad for us, and you eat it too much, too often, too long. It causes issues with your health, right? And then we start losing people at early ages, right? People are, dying in their 30s and 40s and 50s from like heart disease, what I was like never heard of before, or strokes or heart attacks, right? And it's because of the way we live. And so for those of us who are trying to be good temples with our body, and I'm emphasizing the word trying because it's hard, right? Life throws stuff at us, and there's either lack of time or something, or lack of planning, or just where you are at the time. Your food options are limited. But then there's times where we're just at home and we're upset about something. We got an upsetting phone call, and the refrigerator's right there. And you know that ice cream is not for you, that it's for your children, right? And you know you shouldn't eat it because you have an issue with ice cream, right? And meaning you start and you don't just have a bowl, you finish the whole carton. And so we know that. So what do? We establish a boundary and say, I am not going to eat that ice cream today. It is not good for me. My body doesn't like it. It talks to me in so many ways saying that ice cream is not for me. Right now, I'm emotionally eating, and I really, really want this ice cream. But I have to establish a boundary between me and that ice cream because it is so not good for me, and I'm going to feel like a hot mess for the next week or two. And is it worth it? And we constantly have to ask ourselves that, is it worth it? And in some cases, we are so much, I don't care. This is going to help me feel better. It's comfort. It's going to help me feel better. But is it? And so sometimes even with food, we have to have those boundaries. And when we know it's not good for us, when we know, we probably take medication to fix the bad habits we've already done with our bodies, or you're trying to prevent that. Or just even weight, whether you want to gain weight or lose weight. We know what's good for our bodies and what's not good for our bodies. And we have to even establish boundaries with foods. And some of us do it already. Some people have to be gluten-free. Some people have to be dairy-free. Some people have to be sugar-free. Some people have to be all of those free, right? So, and we're setting boundaries all the time when we go out to eat, and everything else. And then why is that? Because we love ourselves and we want to have happy, thriving lives. We don't want to be sick all the time. We don't want to be sick all the time. We don't always want to go to a doctor and they're like, oh, your stress level is this, or your heart is this, oh, this, and this, because that's just more depressing. We want to be able to enjoy our spouses, enjoy our kids, enjoy our siblings, enjoy our jobs, and life, and go on vacations and just enjoy life. But the food choices we make, if we don't have boundaries, can really suck the life out of all of that. It really can. And so I've met a lot of people who are really good with food boundaries. I've met those who are there's more in between people than there is good people who are 100%, right? There's more people in between at different levels. But then there's also those people who don't care. They know they have a pacemaker. They know they have a defibrillator, and they still eat McDonald's 2 or 3 times a week, right? Or fried foods, or, just those things that they know. And they smoke and they drink all at the same time. Is that helping their health? No. And they know that, but they're continuing to do it. But for those of us who are like, yeah, I don't like living like this. I want something better. We have got to be better with boundaries with food as well. Am I right, Cheri?
You are. And one of the things, this is something that I've really struggled with a lot. And the last time that God invited me to a 14-day fast, he brought to my attention, and it's weird because it's not like I didn't know it. It's not like he was telling me something I didn't already know, but I think it was because I had really surrendered a lot in my life to him during this time of prayer and fasting. So they say, which is true, that when you're in the middle of prayer and fasting, you need to be really, really careful with what you put in your mind, because if you put evil in your mind, the devil will really use that. And if you keep with what is good, what is pure, what is holy, what is righteous, that works to your advantage too. So you have to be really, really careful what you feed yourself during a fast, because it's amplified. But we were watching a video on YouTube, and it was talking about, well, the video itself was not about gluttony. It was about something else, but she used gluttony as an example. And it just really struck home with me for whatever reason. And it has really changed the way that I view my life and the way that I view my food choices, the way that I view my lifestyle. And like you said, it's not perfect by any means, but I have started inviting the Holy Spirit into all of my times of eating, because I truly want to make sure that I am doing it in a way that pleases God. And I also saw another thing online which just further reiterated this to me, and it was, nobody can eat for me. Like, we can continue to blame people in our lives for things that they have said to us, spoken over us. We have to get to a point where we take responsibility for ourselves. No one is force feeding us or starving us. No one is doing that to us. We are the ones that are putting up the boundary or not putting up the boundary of how we live our lives, whether that's exercise, whether that's eating, whether that's alcohol, cigarettes, whatever it is, vaping. We are the ones that are making those choices, and we need to stop blaming other people and start taking responsibility for those choices ourselves. And like I said, that just really hit home with me, that I am the one who is in charge of how I eat, how I present my body to God. And thank goodness we have the Holy Spirit working inside of us to help us with that. Because if I had to do it myself, I wouldn't do very well at all. But with his help, I don't know, I had a new perspective over the whole thing. And putting up those boundaries is part of it. And part of putting up boundaries is admitting that we are the ones who are responsible for the choices that we make.
Absolutely. And especially with food. And I love how you said no one can eat for us, right? Also, no one else can de-stress us per se, right?
Right.
Or anything else. And so we have to take responsibility for those things in our life. Like, again, nothing's perfect. But again, we need to just call on the Holy Spirit and be like, Lord, I am struggling right now with food. Just using that as an example. I am struggling right now with food or alcohol or smoking, or whatever else the case may be, because food can be an addiction, right? Food definitely can be an addiction. Yes.
Yeah.
It is an addiction, just like alcohol, cigarettes, drugs, and everything else. And you could be like, Lord, I'm struggling right now. In this particular part of my life, something just happened where I usually run to those things. I usually go get a cigarette, a drink, food. Help me, Lord, to make better decisions for my health and my family's health. Because, again, it goes back to what you were saying, Cheri. Our family is watching us. Our kids are watching us. How do we handle stressful situations? Do we automatically go and get a big, huge piece of cake? So then what does that teach our young children? Oh, when I'm stressed or I get upsetting news, I just need to eat. Right? And everything else. But if they see us saying, God, help me right now, or they see you not just getting a piece of cake, but then they may see you go, oh, I need to go outside for a cigarette. Oh, I need to get a drink. Oh, I need to do this or something like that. We're teaching them that that's okay. Right? Or if a certain situations make us so angry to where we're red in the face, right? And we're like, oh, that person just brought out the worst in me. Did they bring out the worst, or did we just wave the white flag and give them our worst? Right? Because people can only do to us what we let them do to us. No one can make us angry unless we let them make us angry. No one can stress us out unless we let them stress us out, right? No one can do that unless we give them permission to do so. And again, it goes back to what you were saying, taking on that full responsibility. Not saying that people aren't going to do things that make you angry, but how do we respond? Do we respond with anger? Do we immediately just blaze a fire? Now, depending on the situation, it may be called for, but how long does it last? Right? And and how do we react at certain times like that? Like, do we just completely explode on them physically? Or do we take that anger to God? Do we simmer down, calm down, talk it out with God and the Holy Spirit? And it's the same way again with food and the choices that we make with food. And those, unfortunately, food choices start early in life, right? As teenagers, right? It's all about having fun. We go out with our friends and we just eat, drink, where there's just, well, in my case, none of us were allowed. Our parents would have literally probably strangled us if we drank alcohol, but some of our parents. But it was like soda, or some other type of drink or something that was completely horrible for us. And it was fast food. And we have to, as adults, though, we have to say, you know what? I can't continue. It's not life sustaining. It's actually erasing years from my life if I continue to eat like that. And like you say, even with fasting, and I know you were talking more spiritual level, but let's just say you're doing good, you're eating right, you're trying to eat as clean as you can, you're trying to regulate your emotions when it comes to also, addictions and things, then something pops up. Like the other day, I was watching a baseball game with my husband. Do you know, and I think we watched a football game after that, do you know how many times during those games they show food?
Oh, my God. You're not kidding.
I'm like, well, do they just expect people to sit and eat? But what do they do even when you go to the games? What are they giving you? Hot dogs, nachos, pretzels with cheese, sandwich, and all this good stuff, right? The buttery popcorn is so bad for you. So, and then when you're just watching the games at home, it's nothing but food. You may not have thought about pizza because you've been doing so good for about 6 months. Then all of a sudden there's a pizza right there and they're pulling it up and it's so gooey and it's got all your favorite toppings on it. Then all of a sudden you're thinking pizza, right?
Mm-hmm.
But of course that's their whole goal. That
Right.
is their whole goal, because they're just like, and they do it in slow motion, right? Or they're pouring a beer and they're doing it and they have the sound effects where you're like, oh my gosh, that is so refreshing. That is where boundaries come in play. Those emotional boundaries are like, I see what you're doing. You're trying to get me to want something that I really should not be eating. So next commercial break, I'm going to go and just grab me a protein bar. Or something healthy, or grab an apple or an orange or something like that, or just walk away from it, or something like that. But we have to put those boundaries in place. Again, not to punish us. We're not punishing ourselves. We're protecting our mind, body, soul, spirit, and emotions from harm that can come from when we don't have those spiritual, mental, physical, and emotional boundaries in place. Wow, that was a lot about boundaries today, Cheri. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, I think that was good, but man, we could probably spend a whole year talking about boundaries because there's just so much that goes into it. But I really pray that people were blessed by it. I pray that that we said something just like I was saying before, where we were watching a YouTube video and it had nothing to do really with gluttony. That was just an example she gave. So I pray that in some of what we said today, that the Holy Spirit will use even just that one tidbit of information or that one piece of encouragement to encourage those out there. If you want to know more about Kara, visit her website, novelsbykaraRhunt.com, but also head over to Substack. It's author Kara R. Hunt at Substack for Faith and Cheer newsletter. I get them. I'm subscribed to her, and I absolutely love to read them. They're very uplifting, very encouraging, and they talk about the podcast sometimes. So you can go on there, and that way, if you don't really know what to listen to the podcast on, she can, guide you over to that as well. You can head over to my website, cheriswalwell.com, if you want to know more about, I have a YouTube channel, I have a mentorship, and then I've written books as well. I'm also over on Substack, which if you hit the join the newsletter on my website, then you can join for free over on Substack as well. So it's just 2 clicks that way, because I can never find people on Substack. I'm like horrible at that stuff. I didn't do well with the dictionary game. I didn't do well with, I am very directionally challenged. So if you give me just a link to press on, I'm so much better than if you're like, go over here and find such and such. I'm like, I don't know how to do that. But that's just me. So if you're like me, head over to cheriswalwell.com, hit the free newsletter. That will take you over to my Substack. If you're smart, like Kara, author Kara R. Hunt on Substack for her Faith and Cheer newsletter. If you need prayer or you want encouragement, email us at cheeruppodcast@gmail.com. We absolutely love reading the emails from our listeners, and we would love to hear from you as well. And like Kara has said, drop us a line, tell us when your birthday is, and if we're taping at time, we will give you a shout out, because if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't do what we're doing. And we're just so incredibly grateful that you're here and that you listen every week. And we just pray that you are encouraged, because like our theme verse says, John 16:33, these things I have spoken to you, and this is Jesus, not us, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. There is absolutely nothing like the peace that Jesus Christ gives us. And just this morning, I woke up early in bed, and I was just ruminating about some things. And I'm like, Jesus, I just need your peace. I'm so sick and tired of thinking of these things. And so in a way, I was putting up a boundary. I was inviting Jesus into my life. I was inviting him into my worries and into my cares. And I was saying, take it, because I don't even want to worry about this stuff. And, he gave me his peace. It didn't come super, quick. It took a process, but I love that, because it's a relationship with him. It's not set it and forget it. It's not a quick fix. It's not a remedy. It's a relationship. And so the more I talked to him and the more I just sat in his presence, I literally felt like like God, our Father, was wrapping me up in a great big hug, and Jesus's peace settled over me, and I still feel it now. Once you have experienced his peace, there is nothing like it. You'll never want to go back. And that's just me sharing my heart. But having said all of that, have a great rest of your day, a wonderful week, and we will be back here with you next week.